welcome to the I'm sorry, there you go. Thank you. So welcome to the Budget and Finance Committee meeting. This meeting, we have a short agenda. We're going to cover a couple topics, which are going to be our audit for 2021. We're going to cover our COVID spending grants and where we stand, and real estate tax collection. So what I'll do is I'm going to bring up my slides, and I'm going to ask Edmund from Barbara King Thornton to, and Edmund, I can draw your slide for you to go over his presentation, his component, and I'll bring it up.
Okay.
Hold tight 1 second. And I'll bring it up into a slideshow. There you go. There you go.
Then when I'll just let you know when to skip to the next page and all that.
Okay.
All right, great. So you ready for me?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. Thank you, everybody. So I believe I met most of you before, but I'm Edmund Kusulaye. I'm the partner with Barbara King Thornton and Company. So this is just a short presentation. I believe, Jeff, you did give everybody a copy of the audit report. So
yes, I did. Yes.
So okay, great. So I just put together a short PowerPoint just to touch on the highlights, communicate the results of the audit to you tonight, based on our audit. So most important thing, we did issue unmodified opinions on your audit, which are clean opinions on your financial statements. We, however, did have one finding this year, and I'm going to touch on it, getting to the end of my presentation. Your report was dated December 15, 2021, and they've been submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. So you met because you do have a single audit, meaning that you receive over $750,000 in federal funds. You had to do a single audit that has been submitted to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. Jeff, I believe you've submitted it for your bond, so you met those reporting requirements too. Your audit also was done in accordance with generally accepted U.S. auditing standards, and we also did follow governmental auditing standards that were issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We didn't have any significant deficiencies in your internal controls over your financial reporting. We had one material weakness which related to bank reconciliations during the year, and I guess I can touch on the findings. So that relates to the one finding we had, and pretty much we noted that during the year, because you had vacancies in your assistant business manager position, some of the monthly bank recs were not done, or even if they were done, they were not accurate, because that position was open and there wasn't that oversight for somebody to look at those bank recs, and we determined that to be a material weakness. However, subsequent to year end, you have brought in an assistant business manager, and all your bank recs have been done and been reviewed, and they're in good shape now. So this finding has been addressed subsequent to year end, but because it was within the year we're looking at, we had to report it in our audit report. But it's been rectified as of now. So Jeff, next page, please. So as I mentioned earlier too, you did have a single audit because you received over $750,000 in federal funds. We did issue an unmodified opinion relating to compliance based on the federal funds that you spent. So there were no non-compliance reported, meaning that we didn't have any audit findings relating to the federal funds that you spent. You were in compliance based on our audit with the federal requirements that the school needed to be complying with. There were no significant deficiencies or any material weaknesses in your internal controls. In your internal controls, requirements with the major programs supported. All right. Your total federal expenditures this year was $10.5 million. You would see that there's a significant increase here because the school did receive a significant amount of COVID funds, which came through the state and the DCIU. So your federal funding increased this year. Also, because of the increase in your federal funds, we had to test 3 federal awards this year to meet the minimum requirements that the federal government expects you to have audited. So we looked at your IDEA cluster, the Stabilization Fund, and the Coronavirus Relief Funding as part of the audit. Normally, in a normal year, we'll look at one or two, normally one federal program for you to meet the threshold. But because of the increase in your federal funding, we had to look at 3 programs this year. And the Coronavirus Relief Fund, that's a new program this year. So it's a high risk program. And we had to review that. We didn't have any findings related to how the school districts spent the funding related to those funds, and as well as the stabilization funds as well also. So, and most importantly, the school was a low risk auditee, meaning that the past 2 years, you haven't had any audit findings, and you've had a single audit done successfully the past 2 years. So you were a low risk auditee during the current year. So moving on to the next. Great. So as you all know, fund balance is a very important, that's something that most governments look at to see, how they're trending, how they're doing from year to year. So pretty much your fund balance is what, that is available for the district for future years, right? So I figured, we'll look at it, see how it's trending between 2020 and 2021. The general fund balance decreased by $212,000 comparing 2020 and 2021. So it wasn't a lot of change between those two numbers. Your capital projects fund, however, decreased by $1.2 million, but this was mainly due to capital projects, planned capital projects in the current year. You had the funding from previous years, but the expenditures were incurred in the current year, hence the decrease in your fund balance for the capital projects fund. And your debt service fund increased by $289,000. So all in all, the general fund, the debt service fund, there wasn't a lot of change in your fund balance. Capital projects, decreased because of additional spending that occurred this year as well. Right. And quickly, I have a chart here showing, comparing 2020 and 2021. I'm not going to go through all the numbers, but you can see the trend for each of the funds as I mentioned earlier. So we'll move on to the next one. And I would like to concentrate on the general fund, because as you know, the general fund is the school district's major fund. And we'll look at your revenues and your expenditures, and so you can see how, comparing 2021 and 2020, how your revenues and expenditures are trending for both years. So looking at your revenues increased by $6.3 million when you compare your fiscal 2020 and your fiscal 2021. And the biggest reason is that you received about $4.1 million in federal funds, and it was mostly COVID funding received from the feds and other agencies this year. Your expenditures, and this is just the general fund, your general fund expenditures increased by $8.4 million, mostly in instruction and support services. And this has to do with increases, mostly COVID funding, instruction and support services this past year. So, your revenues increased, it's in line with, the increase in expenditures as well for the general fund. Also of note here is that the general fund transferred $1.5 million to the debt service fund to fund your future debt service, your current and future debt service on your bonds this year. So moving on. So those are the numbers. Now we'll look at your pension. So as you know, the school district is enrolled in PSAs. You don't have any power per se to control this, but all the school districts in the state of Pennsylvania are enrolled in here. I just wanted to point out to you that your PSAs pension is just 54.32% funded, meaning that the total assets compared to the total liabilities for the pensions is just 54.32% funded. And as part of your pension too, you have a small portion for OPEB, other post-employment benefits, which is 5.69% funded. That's a small portion of it. But over the past years, it's been between the 55% and the 54% for a couple of years now. But that's not within the school districts. You have no control over how the pension is funded. All you do is pretty much pay your contributions every year, and you've done that. You did meet the obligations to fund your portion of the pensions this year. So. Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I just wanted to, the current year findings was a bank reconciliation. I already mentioned that. Other than that, we didn't have any additional findings. We did have some minor adjustments during the year that were posted, but nothing of material nature. The audit results was reviewed with Jeff and Bob before it was finalized. So we had their cooperation in everything that we did. Any requests that we put that came up from us, they were able to provide us documentation to support the audit that we did. So, and I think that should be it. If there are any questions for me, I will take them, or for me, myself and Jeff or Bob, we'll take them now.
Thank you, Edmund. Do any school board directors have any questions for Edmund?
No,
At this
time, I don't.
Thank you. Do any participants have any questions for Edmund? You can put them in Q&A or just raise your hand. All right, Edmund, always a pleasure. Always
Thank
good.
you. Yeah, thank you very much, and Happy New Year to everybody.
You too, Edmund.
All right, take care.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So the next area we're going to talk about is going to be our COVID grants. And I'm going to let me move my screen so I can see everything clearly. So what you see here are the grants that are related to COVID that we received over the last couple of years, year and a half or so. ESSER 1, ESSER 2, 3, the GEAR grant, the CARES grant, and also there's another CARES we got from Delco. So you'll see what we did here in the first line. We provided the extra grant amount of what was provided to the district, and we showed the expenses that are already expended thus far. That's on the second line here where my mouse is. On the third line, what we did was we wanted to give a brief description of what the funds were spent on thus far. And you'll see, for example, ESSER 1, we did a lot of instructional materials, and that was the original ESSER grant that came out. So we're in the middle of ESSER 2. So we spent thus far roughly a little over $2 million on summer programs. And let me go down each one first. I think that's a lot easier. I apologize. So ESSER 1, we received $1.8 million. We expended $1.83 million. So we have a remaining balance of $23,000. The majority of that funds were spent on instructional materials. The remaining amount for ESSER 1 is going to be spent, and we have money already allocated, is going to be spent for instructional materials. And I think this is materials, and if I'm correct, a certain portion of what we receive has to go to the Title I non-public schools. I think those are the funds we have allocated for them. So ESSER 1 has been expended in complete totality right now.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, when you say instructional materials, you really mean the new curriculums that we purchased?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to connect the dots for everyone. That is our math.
It's right. It's funny because when you try to come up with the description, like, well, how do we cover what we did? So you try to come up with a phrase that it's a catch-all phrase is what we did. So yeah, thank you very much.
And that was math and science, I believe, correct?
I believe so. I have to go back and look. I know it was curriculum. I know that.
Yep.
Okay. So ESSER 2 is the one we're in the middle of right now. We received $7.8 million. We spent $2 million in summer enrichment programs last summer. So of the remaining funds we're still in the process. We have a budget set up for summer enrichment for next summer coming up and the following summer. We have technology equipment allocated within that. We have the DCIU technology. We did training, or we did and still had training for race equity and inclusion. We have our teacher wellness packages that we provided to teachers this year. And we have the funding that I think was in the board update about what the classroom spending to increase curriculum. And some of our PLC costs are going to come out of this as well for this year. And the ongoing, as Dr. B. Coates would like to say, the gift that keeps on giving is PPE related to COVID. We're constantly at this particular point, for example, I mean, we had to go buy new masks the other day. We had to go buy all kinds of stuff. So a lot of that stuff is still evolving. The PPE expenses are still ongoing, and probably will go on for a while. So that will take up the rest of it. But the majority of what's remaining is going to be the summer enrichment and the DCIU and the PLC costs is what's going to take up the remainder of that. So we have that allocated and budgeted out. Okay. So ESSER 3, the new one, the big one coming, the majority of this, the program still has to be submitted completely. So this is going to be HVAC. That's what that's going to be. This is the whole conversation we had the last couple of months regarding the facilities master plan. So that's what these funds are going to be allocated for, strictly for that purpose. Okay. There was a small grant gear. I forgot what the acronym is. Maybe Bob remembers. I don't remember what the acronym is. But what we did with this here, we used this, we offset it by the salary for ESY for last summer. So last summer, I think our salary for ESY was approximately $100,000, give or take. And we used this right here to apply that for those salaries. So the gear grant is already spent and that's done and it's out the way. This is the original CARES grant that came through when everything broke out in March of 20. And this was used primarily for PPE is what this was for. The original onslaught of what we purchased, signs for the building, getting stuff and getting sanitizer, things of that nature. Everything was encompassed in this grant right here. And the last grant that we're going to cover for COVID was the Delco CARES grant. This is the one that ran through Delco, Delaware County, I apologize.
County Council.
Yes, man. Gosh, thank you very much. This is what ran through them. If you were every district in the Delaware County got it, and it was based upon your Title I levels. So we received $2.8 million and we allocated and we spent all the funds here based strictly on technology equipment. So that was all expended. And again, we covered that last year. That was in a prior budget presentation where we went over where everything was spent last year for that Delco CARES. So, so this is where we are with all of our COVID grants. This is what's left. So the big thing remaining for us now, as I stated, we have everything allocated for ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. Once that's submitted, that's going to be the HVAC program that's going to address some of our buildings in the immediate future. So I'm going to stop right there and open up for questions.
Any school board directors have any questions, please?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you so much.
Not at this time, Jen.
All right, thank you, Ms. Boykins.
Okay.
Ms. Commodore, you have your hand raised. WPS2, can someone make it so Ms. Commodore can speak, please?
1 second.
We're coming, Ms. Commodore. Thank you for your patience. There you go, Ms. Commodore. Good evening.
No problem. Truly understandable. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all this evening. I'm looking at the allocated funds and the possible grants coming in. When the grants were coming in, was there an opportunity for union leaders to speak with departments about possibly giving our input on how some funds could be distributed throughout the district?
I don't remember that there was an opportunity at that particular point. I think some of the grants, no. So let me correct that. So I know, for example, like when we did the Delco CARES grant, there was conversation amongst the administration with the WPA of what was needed in that conversation. about what was needed. So there was conversation there. I think there was conversation, and I don't necessarily know that the conversation in ESER 1 was, okay, what do you think? But I know there was conversation, oh, we're going to do the curriculum. This is a result of our curriculum audit. So there was conversation there. I don't know that there was a conversation, okay, what do you think we're going to do with it? But there was conversation that flowed with that. And I think the same thing with the summer enrichment. I think there was conversation with the administration as well as WPEA on some of the summer enrichment stuff. And some of what we heard was where we tried to address the race and equity inclusion discussion. And also, I think the classroom spending came as a result of listening to some of what people said they needed and they wanted for their buildings and what helped them foster educate instructional. So it may not have been in that direct format, but I think a lot of what was spent was a result of conversations with the I don't want to say unions, with the bargaining agreements.
So it was with one bargaining agreement unit, but not with the other one. Understand? That's my understanding of it.
To an extent, but I think a lot of the decisions were made from hearing everyone. I think it wasn't just solely that. I hear what you're saying, but I think it was a product of listening to everyone. There was a lot of between the meetings and all the other conversations. So I think it's a product of the whole of listening to everyone that geared and steered where we were spending our funds.
I can honestly say I was never aware of that. So you can't say everyone.
Okay.
The next thing is that classroom spending. That was wonderful, giving to the teachers because they did deserve it, because 99% of the time they do make purchases out of their own pockets, for their classrooms. However, is it a possibility that we can consider a bonus for everyone in the district? And this is my reason. A lot of us, when PPEs were not available, a lot of people did things out of their pocket. A lot of people basically took things out of their pocket to make things happen. And I was just wondering if it could be possible, a consideration, you can run the numbers if it's possible. Could a bonus of at least 1,000 or 1,500 be given to everyone in the district on a separate paycheck, on a separate check, not included in their paycheck? Because then it's not really a bonus, but it's something I think can be processed and is in consideration and allocated within the grants, because it has been done in other districts. So I was just wondering if that's a consideration, because you give one bargaining unit, a bonus, but you don't think about the other bargaining unit who has done just as much as the other one. That's just a thought.
Ms. Commodore, the other bargaining unit did not receive a bonus. They received money for their classrooms, which I hope if there were other bargaining unit members in that room, they took that into consideration.
No, I mean, from my understanding, that only went to the WPEA. WPESPA was not a part of that.
No, what I'm saying is the bonus given, why I wouldn't call it a bonus. It was classroom teachers given $300 that they had to supply receipts for to purchase things, and it had to be approved by their principal to purchase things for their classroom.
True, but you're offering them an additional financial compensation is what I'm saying.
No, ma'am, it's not. It doesn't show up on their W-2. It is for their classroom as approved by their principal. So they don't receive that money. They receive things for their classroom.
Okay, my apologies, totally mistaken. Right. So the next thing is to consider the financial compensation for everyone in the district through this time, because it's just a thought.
Yes, I understand the thought, and your questions will be communicated to Dr. Beekos.
That's it.
All right, thank you, Ms. Commodore. There's a question in the Q&A from Ms. Douglas. Are the Lakeside Services contracted through ESSER?
Lakeside Services,
That's additional mental health supports.
I believe so, yes. I had to check the purchase order, but right now I will, yes, I'm going to say yes. I'm about 95% sure, but again, if you don't see it, you can't answer that 100%, but I believe that it is.
Okay. Ms. Douglas, thank you for that question. If Mr. Cuff's answer was incorrect, we will get back with you and correct ourselves.
Bob, can you take the note down of the person? So make sure I contact, or if you can email me your contact, I'll just make sure I respond to you directly.
Thank you. Any attendees or school board directors have any further questions? Okay, next up, Mr. Cuff.
Thank you. So what I want to touch on is our real estate tax collection. So we're almost at the end of the real estate tax collection season. So taxes go out in July, and you have to, and let's remember this is the first year of a countywide reassessment. So last year we budgeted roughly $44.6 million for taxes, and as of January this time last year we collected $45 million, 198, which is actually $526,000 over what we budgeted. So actually we collected last year 45 million, which is actually pretty good. We came in over budget last year. We had a reassessment this year. We didn't raise taxes, but we anticipated collecting more or close to what we collected last year. So you'll see our budget for this year was 45.4, which is a slightly higher than what we collected last year, 45.2. So we anticipated an increase there. So what has happened this year? We have collected 44.8, which is about $550,000 less than what we budgeted. Now it looks bad. Well, it looks like it is a deficit, but we did almost collect the same amount as what we did last year. So I'll say that we are still receiving payments in. There's still a lot of people who trickle in at the latter part of January. Our taxes are not to be, we don't have to turn them in to Delaware County tax claim until the end of February. So while the period closes, well, closed December 31st, we will still take payments, and we are still going after people. We are still communication with people who owe us funds. So this is just, I want to give you a quick snapshot, and this is what we provided last year, or where we were with tax collection. So right now we're at a deficit on our tax collection for this current year for 2021. Okay, so I wanted to share that. I want that again. This is about roughly 40–45%.
I want to be very clear. I want to thank the citizens for paying their taxes in these COVID times. It is greatly appreciated.
Right. So I bring it. So this will be a component that we will have to discuss, and we will factor into what we do going forward as we develop our remaining budget going into 22–23. So this is the first real tangible information that we have that we want to report that and get that out. And I'll report this again after we go through next month, and we'll see where we are after we do collections for the next month or so. Because again, we're still receiving payments right now. Be honest with you. People are still paying. We're still taking checks. I'm not turning any check away whatsoever.
Mr. Cuff, when do the taxes that are unpaid get turned over to tax claim?
So we turn everything over at the end of February to tax claim. Then typically tax claim processes, I guess they get that to process the whole county. So typically around the middle of April, and sometime maybe the beginning of May, they will send out the delinquent tax bills. They'll send out notices to people who failed to pay their taxes. You have a lien against your property, and then they actually process fees and penalties and interest on them, and that interest accrues over time.
Great. Thank you. Any questions by the Board of School Board Directors?
None at this time.
None at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Thank you, Mr. Tan. Any questions from participants? All right. Anything else, Mr. Cook?
No, I just want to share that next go around, we've already sent out a request. We're going to start a budget advisory council back up again, as we did last
Right.
year. And then the next phase, we're going to start discussing because we're going to, so as far as facilities master plan, what you're going to discuss, which we've kind of discussed a lot of this already with what it's going to cost. We're going to go through the process, what it takes to borrow funds, and we'll outline that process going forward. So that it'll be two components. It'll be the borrowing and it'll
Right.
be the building of the budget going forward.
Thank you, Mr. Cuff, and thank you for reminding me, school board directors, your budget advisory council person recommendation was due into Janet today. The day is not over. Please get her if you have not, please get her your person. It can be the same person as you recommended last year.
Correct.
So that could save on a learning curve, but please, and I will reach out to school board directors this evening to make sure that they get their person in. If you need help with suggestions, please don't hesitate to reach out.
And Janet did receive some phone calls today. She has the list of who called earlier today.
I'm sorry, Jeff, can you repeat?
Janet did receive calls today of people who recommended a few people for the budget advisory committee.
All right, thank you so much. Anything for the greater good? Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Please be careful out there. Please wear your masks. We're close. We have no one to lose, so please be careful. Thank you, staff, very
I
much.
just stopped sharing. Thank you. Hey, Ms. Hopkins just showed up.